Did you know that in the last year alone, individuals over 60 lost over $3 billion to fraud? $3 billion. That's not a rounding error, it's a fleet of private jets. It's the kind of number that should stop you cold. Most people hear that and they picture some poor, confused soul falling for an obvious trick. They think, that could never be me. And that right there is the first mistake. That's the crack in the armor where the predator sinks his teeth. The most successful scams don't target fools. They target intelligent, capable people who have one very human vulnerability. They believe their rational mind is always in the driver's seat. They forget about the scared animal that lives inside all of us, the one that reacts to fear, not with logic, but with instinct. Let me tell you about a client of mine, a man named George. He was a retired architect, sharp as a tack, designed civic buildings. He called me not because he'd lost money, but because he'd come terrifyingly close and it shook him to his core. He'd received a call from someone claiming to be from his bank's fraud department. The caller was calm, professional, and used all the right terminology. He told George there had been a sophisticated cyber attack from an Eastern European syndicate and that they needed to move his money to a secure mirror account immediately to protect it. The key word there is immediately. The scammer wasn't yelling, he was firm, projecting an air of controlled crisis. He said, "Sir, I understand this is alarming, but we have a window of about 5 minutes before the hackers breach the final firewall. I need your cooperation now." George described a sudden cold sweat, a tightness in his chest. His meticulously ordered world was collapsing in a phone call. The scammer wasn't selling a lottery ticket, he was selling safety from a terrifying, invisible threat. That's the first principle of modern financial deception. They don't sell you a fantasy of getting rich quick anymore. They sell you salvation from a nightmare they've just invented for you. What the scammer was doing is a classic technique to induce what psychologists call an amygdala hijack. Your amygdala is the ancient, primitive part of your brain, your internal smoke detector. When it senses a threat, a predator in the grass, or in this case, a hacker in the wires, it floods your system with cortisol and adrenaline. This shuts down your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain right behind your forehead that handles logic, reason, and impulse control. You literally become unable to think straight. The scammer creates the fire, then hands you his very expensive, very fake fire extinguisher. The subtle cues are rarely what you see in the movies. It's not about avoiding eye contact on the phone, that's impossible. It's about listening to what isn't said. George noted the caller would never answer a direct question with a simple yes or no. When George asked, "Can I call you back on the bank's main number?" the scammer didn't say no. He said, "Sir, by the time you do that, the funds will be gone. I am trying to protect you. Do you want to be responsible for losing your life savings over a procedural question?" See what he did there? He reframed a perfectly reasonable act of verification as an irresponsible, dangerous delay. He turned George's logic against him, using shame and fear as a weapon. He created a time crunch so manufactured, so intense, that slowing down felt like the riskiest thing you could do. In reality, it's the only thing that can save you. So, let me ask you this. When was the last time you felt that sudden, urgent pressure to act on a financial matter? A pop-up on your computer, a text from a strange number, an email with a red urgent tag? Did you feel your heart rate quicken? That S, not just stress, that S your body telling you that your rational brain is being sidelined. The only winning move in that situation is to do nothing. Hang up the phone, close the laptop, go for a walk. Let the cortisol clear from your system. The urgency is a mirage. Real financial institutions will never ever pressure you into an instant decision over the phone. They have procedures. Scammers have scripts. Learning to tell the difference begins with learning to listen to your own body's ancient, reliable alarm system. It's tempting to think the real danger is out there in the digital shadows, with the anonymous caller from a foreign country. But the truth is, the principles of deception are at play every single day, in broad daylight. in the showroom, on the sales floor, and across the desk from a person with a warm smile and a firm handshake. The tactics are just dressed up in a nicer suit. We're not talking about outright fraud here. We're talking about the murky, gray world of high-pressure sales and manipulative marketing, where your own psychology is leveraged against you to separate you from your money. This is the battle you fight not once in a lifetime, but potentially several times a year. I had a couple come to me for consultation, Frank and Eleanor. They were buying a new car, something they'd saved for. They found one they liked and sat down with the salesman. The man was a master. He mirrored their posture, laughed at Frank's jokes, complimented Eleanor's sensible questions. He built a warm, inviting bubble of rapport. Then, once they were comfortable, the pressure started, subtle as a tide coming in. He'd mention casually, "You know, I had another family looking at this exact model this morning. They were supposed to call me back any minute." Suddenly, their leisurely decision became a race. He was creating scarcity out of thin air. The most potent part was when they tried to leave to think about it. The salesman's entire demeanor shifted. The warm smile became a tight, concerned line. He'd say, "Folks, I want to be honest with you. My manager is going to kill me for offering you this price. It's only good for today. If you walk out that door, I can't guarantee I can get it for you tomorrow." He was leveraging two of the most powerful psychological triggers there are: the scarcity principle and commitment and consistency. Scarcity is simple. We are hardwired to want things more when we think they are rare or running out. Limited time offer, only 2 seats left, sale ends Friday. These aren't just slogans, they are direct commands to the primitive part of your brain that fears missing out. The salesman created a false scarcity of price. The second trigger, commitment and consistency, is more insidious. By getting Frank and Eleanor to invest time, the test drive, the coffee, the hour of negotiation, he was building a psychological debt. The longer they stayed, the more they felt an internal pressure to see it through, to make the commitment consistent with the time they'd already spent. To walk away after all that would feel like a personal failure, a waste. The salesperson's job is to make leaving feel more painful than staying and signing. Let's talk about the physical tells. When the salesman was building rapport, he was an open book. Palms up, leaning in, relaxed posture. The moment Frank said, "We need to go home and discuss it," the man's body language created a barrier. He didn't put up a wall, but he stood up and leaned against the edge of the desk closest to the door, physically yet politely obstructing their exit. His arms crossed, not in an aggressive way, but in a thoughtful posture that still broadcasted a closed signal. These are calculated moves. They are trained to use nonverbal cues to maintain control of the environment and the conversation. You also have to listen to the language. He never used the word cost, it was always an investment. He wasn't selling them a car, he was helping them get into the right vehicle for their family. This reframing is designed to lower your defenses by making a transactional relationship feel like a collaborative one. So, here are the questions you need to ask yourself next time you're in a negotiation. First, who is in control of the clock? If a deadline is being imposed on you that you did not create, you need to recognize that as a tactic. Urgency is the enemy of clarity. Second, how much of your decision is based on the merits of the product versus the fear of losing the deal? If you are more afraid of the deal evaporating than you are excited about what you re-buying, your emotions are being played. The most powerful tool you have in these situations is the willingness to walk away. It's not a bluff, it's a strategy. Giving yourself permission to say, "Thank you for your time, but not today," is how you take back control. It's how you pop the bubble of rapport and pressure and walk back out into the clean air of rational thought. There are very few conversations in professional life more choreographed and yet more unnervingly human than asking for more money. It's a dance. You present your case, a carefully constructed argument of value and merit. Your boss, in turn, performs their role, representing the company's interests. But beneath this formal exchange, a torrent of unfiltered subconscious communication is flowing back and forth. And if you only listen to the words, you're missing half the conversation, usually the more honest half. The key isn't to look for a single magical tell that screams liar, but to read the entire landscape of behavior and spot the moments where the words and the body say two different things. I worked with a woman, let's call her Diane, a project manager who was consistently outperforming her peers. She was preparing to ask for a significant raise, and she was nervous. Her boss, a man named Robert, was outwardly supportive, always full of praise for her work. The problem was, praise doesn't pay the mortgage. I told her the first step was to establish a baseline. For a week before her meeting, she paid close attention to Robert's behavior in low-stakes situations. How did he sit when he was genuinely pleased with a team update? He'd lean forward, steeple his fingers, and make direct, sustained eye contact. What was his go-to stalling phrase when he was caught off guard? He'd clear his throat and say, "Interesting, let me circle back on that." Armed with this baseline, she went into the negotiation. She laid out her accomplishments, her market value, and stated her desired salary. The number hung in the air. Immediately, Robert's posture changed. He, who always leaned in, leaned back in his chair, creating physical distance. His hands, which were on the table, clasped behind his head, a gesture of superiority and evaluation, not collaboration. He broke eye contact and glanced at his monitor. Then he said the words, "Diane, this is impressive, and no one values you more than I do. The number is ambitious, but let me take it to the board and see what's possible." Verbally, it sounded like a promise of effort, but his body language screamed dismissal. The lean back was a subconscious rejection. The glance at the monitor was a desire to escape the uncomfortable conversation. The vagueness of "see what's possible" with no timeline was the verbal equivalent of a smoke bomb. This is a classic case of what we call cognitive dissonance. Robert likely did value Diane as an employee, but he was unwilling or unable to meet her salary request. This creates an internal conflict. His positive view of her versus his negative response to her request. To ease this mental discomfort, his brain chose the path of least resistance, a polite, non-committal deflection. He wasn't necessarily lying to her maliciously. He was, in a way, lying to himself to maintain his self-image as a supportive boss while still serving the company's bottom line. The truth of the situation wasn't in his encouraging words, but in the leakage, the non-verbal signals that betrayed his internal state. So how do you spot this in the moment? Look for the shift. When the topic of money is broached, does their vocal tone become higher or flatter? Do they suddenly develop an interest in a pen on their desk? Do they shift from inclusive language like "we" and "us" to impersonal institutional language like the company, policy, or HR? These are all signs that they are moving from a personal collaborative mindset to a defensive, bureaucratic one. And what about your colleagues who boast about their salaries or bonuses? The one who is bluffing often overcompensates. Their stories are grandiose but lack verifiable details. They might show a flicker of a smirk when they name a big number, what we call duping delight, the thrill of getting away with it. Have you ever walked out of a salary review feeling vaguely positive about the words you heard, only to realize a week later that nothing has actually happened? That feeling of disconnect is your intuition telling you that the non-verbal signals didn't match the verbal promises. The next time you're in that room, pay attention to more than the script. Is your boss physically engaged, asking follow-up questions and setting concrete timelines? Or are they creating distance, offering platitudes, and changing the subject? The words might be about a future possibility, but the body is telling you the truth about the present reality. Now we move from the structured confines of the corporate office to the high-stakes world of partnerships, startups, and private investment. This is where the rule book gets thinner and the personalities get bigger. When you're considering investing your capital or your career in a new venture, you have to understand that you are not buying a business plan or a spreadsheet. Those things can be fabricated with ease. What you are truly buying is the psychology of the person at the helm. And in no other arena is the disconnect between a person's projected reality and their actual circumstances more dramatic or more costly for those who fail to see it. I was once asked by an investor, a sharp man named David, to sit in on a final pitch from a young, charismatic founder of a tech company. David was ready to write a 7-figure check. The pitch was a masterpiece. The founder was eloquent, the slide deck was beautiful, the projections went straight up and to the right. He had a brilliant answer for everything. But I wasn't watching the slides, I was watching the founder's body. For all his verbal polish, he was a volcano of suppressed anxiety. His blink rate was about double the normal speed, a sure sign of a mind racing under pressure. And while he gestured confidently with his right hand, his left hand was under the table, gripping his own thigh so hard his knuckles were white. David was mesmerized by the vision being sold. I was watching the physiological reality. The tell came when David asked a very direct question. What is your current monthly burn rate, and how many months of runway does that leave you with? The founder smiled, a perfect media-trained smile. But for a fraction of a second, a moment so brief you would miss it if you weren't looking for it, his lips tightened and pulled back in a micro-expression of pure fear. Then he launched into a complex answer about strategic overhead and scalable growth, never once stating the simple numbers. The language was designed to confuse, to create a fog of jargon. His body, in that one fleeting moment, had told us the unvarnished truth. The plane was running out of fuel. We advised David to pause. A little digging revealed the company was on the verge of insolvency. The pitch wasn't a presentation of strength. It was an act of desperation. This is the sympathetic nervous system in action. When a person is under extreme existential duress, like the fear of their company collapsing, their body enters a state of fight or flight. This isn't a conscious choice. The brainstem takes over, pumping the body full of adrenaline. This causes the heart to pound, the breathing to become shallow, and it creates a powerful visceral need to either run or fight. In a boardroom, you can do neither. So that massive surge of nervous energy has to go somewhere. It leaks out. It leaks out in a tapping foot, a clenching fist, a quickened blink rate, a shaky hand reaching for a glass of water. The polished executive in the prefrontal cortex can recite the script, but the terrified mammal in the limbic system is screaming for help through nonverbal channels. When you're doing your due diligence, look for these points of incongruence. Ask a tough question, and watch for the initial unfiltered reaction before the rehearsed answer kicks in. Does the person's tone match their words? Are they talking about massive success in a flat, tired voice? Are they projecting calm while their body is fidgeting and tense? Pay attention to how they answer questions about their failures. An authentic, confident leader will own their mistakes and talk about what they learned. A deceptive or desperate one will blame external factors, reframe failures as successes, or answer a different question entirely. Their story will be a perfect, heroic narrative with no cracks, and perfect narratives are almost always fiction. So, the next time you're about to put your trust or your money into someone's hands, ask them this. What is the one thing about this venture that keeps you awake at 3 a.m.? Don't just listen to the answer. Watch them as they formulate it. An honest person will likely pause, break eye contact to access their memory, and then give you a sincere, specific concern. A dishonest person will give you a pre-packaged, clever non-answer. That pause, that moment of vulnerability, is where you find the truth. The numbers on the page tell you the story they want you to believe. The story their body tells is the one you need to hear. We have been navigating the treacherous landscapes of the outside world, the scammer, the salesman, the boss. Now, we turn inward. We come to the one place where we expect to be safe, which makes it the most dangerous place of all to be deceived: our own home. Financial lies between partners, between parents and children, are rarely about simple greed. They are tangled webs of fear, pride, and most of all, shame. Uncovering these deceptions isn't about winning an argument or catching someone in a lie. It's about spotting the signs of a hidden crisis before it detonates and shatters the trust that is the bedrock of a family. I once worked with a woman named Carol. She and her husband, Bill, had been married for 30 years. She came to me because a deep chill had settled over their home. Bill had become distant, jumpy, and prone to fits of anger over nothing. Her first fear was that he was seeing another woman, but none of the classic signs were there. The change, she eventually realized, was centered entirely around money. The mail would come and he'd snatch the bank statements before she could see them. She'd mention wanting to repair the roof and he'd bite her head off, saying they couldn't afford it, even though they'd always been comfortable. He wasn't lying with his words, exactly. He was lying with his entire being. His body was a fortress of anxiety. I advised her to stop asking direct questions, which only triggered his defenses, and instead to just observe. The tells were heartbreakingly clear. He would sit at the kitchen table, staring into space, rubbing his temples in a classic self-soothing gesture of extreme stress. When a commercial for an investment firm came on TV, she saw him physically flinch, a full-body recoil, as if he'd been struck. The lie wasn't a single event. It was the tense, guarded atmosphere he had created to protect his secret. Carol eventually approached him not with an accusation, but with an observation. She said, "Bill, I can see you're in an incredible amount of pain. Whatever this is, it's too heavy for you to carry alone." He broke down and confessed he'd made a series of catastrophic trades with their retirement fund, losing nearly half of it. He wasn't hiding the loss from her, he was hiding from his own crushing shame. Shame is the driving emotion behind most domestic financial deception. It is a profoundly isolating feeling, the belief that you are fundamentally flawed. When a person feels this way, their instinct isn't to reach out for help, but to hide the evidence of their perceived failure. Their brain goes into survival mode. Every conversation about money feels like a threat. Every question feels like an accusation. This triggers a chronic, low-grade fight-or-flight response. The fight is the sudden, inexplicable anger. The flight is the avoidance, the changing of the subject, the emotional and physical withdrawal. They aren't trying to be cruel, they are trying to protect themselves from what feels like total annihilation of their self-worth. The verbal cues are almost always defensive. You ask a simple, non-judgmental question, like, "What was this hardware store charge for?" A partner with nothing to hide might say, "Oh, that was for the new lawnmower." A partner hiding a secret debt might respond with an attack. "Why are you tracking my every move? Don't you trust me?" This tactic is called deflection. By accusing you of mistrust, they put you on the defensive and successfully dodge the original simple question. They change the frame from being about money to being about your relationship, which is a battle they are more comfortable fighting. Consistent vagueness, aggressive defensiveness, and a sudden obsession with financial privacy are not the signs of an affair, they are the symptoms of shame. So how do you approach this? Think about a time you made a mistake you were deeply embarrassed by. Did you want to be interrogated, or did you wish someone would just see your distress and offer you a safe space to confess? The goal is not to be a detective in your own home, but to be a partner. If you feel that wall go up when money is discussed, recognize it for what it is, a defense mechanism born of fear. Lead with empathy. An accusation prompts a lie. An expression of concern and a promise of shared burden can, with time, create an opening for the truth. In the digital age, the charlatan no longer needs to travel from town to town with a cart of tonic. He can now reach millions from a rented studio with a good camera and a fast internet connection. We are in the era of the online financial guru, the impeccably branded, endlessly positive lifestyle coach who promises to sell you the secrets to unlocking immense wealth. But you must understand, their product isn't a financial strategy. Their product is a feeling. It's the intoxicating fantasy of a life without worry, and they sell it by performing a carefully constructed play of success. Your job is to be the critic in the audience who can tell the difference between a real performance and a cheap imitation. I had a young man, a bright kid named Alex, who came to me after losing nearly $10,000, his entire savings, on a mastermind course. The guru, who we'll call Apex, filled his social media with images of himself on private jets, driving exotic cars, and surrounded by beautiful people in exotic locations. He spoke in a language of vibrational alignment and manifesting abundance. He told a compelling story about how he was once broke and hopeless, just like you, before he discovered the secret. Alex bought the course because he wanted to believe. He wanted the shortcut. The course, of course, was nothing more than a series of generic, pre-recorded motivational talks, padded with useless platitudes. The secret was to have the same mindset as Apex, a mindset that, conveniently, could only be maintained by buying his next, more expensive course. These gurus are masters of exploiting two fundamental human biases, the halo effect and social proof. The halo effect is our brain's lazy tendency to let a positive impression in one area bleed over into others. We see the rented Lamborghini, a symbol of success, and our brain subconsciously concludes that the person driving it must be smart, trustworthy, and knowledgeable. They are leveraging a powerful visual symbol to create a halo of legitimacy. Social proof is our instinct to follow the herd. When we see a guru has 1 million followers and thousands of comments saying, "You changed my life," we assume they must be credible. What we don't see is that the followers can be bought, and the glowing testimonials are often curated, exaggerated, or outright fake. They construct a digital kingdom to look like a legitimate authority. The language they use is a critical warning sign. It is a carefully crafted fog of buzzwords. Leverage, scale, optimize, synergize, crush it. The words are designed to sound impressive and intelligent, but they are hollow. They lack specific, actionable meaning. Ask a real estate mogul how they evaluate a property, and they will talk to you for an hour about cap rates, zoning laws, and cash-on-cash return. Ask a fake guru the same question, and they will tell you to think like an owner, not a renter, and to align your energy with the property's potential. One is a strategy, the other is a sermon. A real expert clarifies complexity. A guru creates complexity to appear wise. Look at their body language when they talk. It's often overly practiced, a performance of passionate authenticity. But watch for the disconnects. There's a certain emptiness in the eyes when they throw around huge numbers, a lack of the genuine stress and scar tissue that comes from building a real business. Their primary emotional tool is to create a sense of shame and urgency in you. Their sales pitch is always structured the same way. First, they agitate a pain point. Are you tired of your dead-end job? Then, they present their fantasy life as the only solution. Finally, they create false scarcity to push you to buy now. This offer closes at midnight. It's the same tactic as the car salesman, just wrapped in the language of spiritual enlightenment. So ask yourself this: what is the guru actually selling? Is their primary business the thing that made them rich, like software, real estate, or manufacturing? Or is their primary business teaching other people how to get rich? If it's the latter, then you are not their student. You are their customer, and the product they're selling is your own dream, repackaged and sold back to you at a staggering markup. Real wealth is built slowly, often boringly. The guru sells a fireworks show. Don't be mesmerized by the light and forget that it's just burning money. We have spent our time together in the dark alleys of human motivation, exploring the deceptions that prey on our greed, our ambition, and our fear. But we end now with what is, to my mind, the most contemptible deception of all. This is the con that doesn't target our weaknesses, but our strengths. The one that weaponizes our compassion, our empathy, and our fundamental desire to help another human being in pain. This is the charity scam. It thrives in the wake of hurricanes, earthquakes, and wildfires, and it preys on the very best parts of our nature. After a devastating tornado ripped through a small town a few states over, the outpouring of support was immediate. People wanted to help. Within hours, crowdfunding pages were popping up. One in particular, for a family who had lost everything, was incredibly effective. It had pictures of the ruined home, a heart-wrenching story, and a clear, simple call to action. Donations poured in. The problem was the family whose pictures were being used had never heard of the page. A predator had simply scraped their story and photos from a local news site, set up a payment account, and was funneling the goodwill of strangers directly into his own pocket. He was mining their tragedy for cash. This type of scam is effective because it hijacks our empathy. When we see a visceral story of suffering, our brain's mirror neurons fire. We feel a shadow of that pain. This triggers what social psychologists call the empathy-altruism response. A powerful, almost overwhelming impulse to help arises within us, to alleviate the suffering we are witnessing. The scammer knows this. They don't need a complex financial argument, they just need a powerful photograph and a well-told sob story. They create an emotional flood that sweeps away our critical thinking. The urgency isn't about a limited time offer, it's the urgency of a human being in crisis. To pause, to question, to verify in that moment feels wrong. It feels cynical, and that hesitation to appear cynical is what they count on. When you're confronted with a solicitation, whether it's an email, a phone call, or someone with a bucket on a street corner, the tells are in the pressure and the details. A legitimate charity will be grateful for your donation whenever you choose to give it. A scammer will create a sense of manufactured urgency. We're loading the trucks with aid right now, we need your credit card number before they leave. That is a red flag the size of a billboard. Secondly, ask for specifics. Don't just ask where the money goes, ask how it gets there. What exact percentage of my donation goes directly to victim services versus administrative and fundraising costs? A legitimate organization will know that number and be proud to share it. A scammer will deflect, give you a vague answer, or even try to shame you for asking, saying things like, "Sir, people are suffering and you're worried about accounting." Yes, you are, because that's how you ensure your help actually helps. Think about the emails that flood your inbox after a major news event. Look closely. Is the organization's name slightly off from a well-known charity? Is the email from a generic address instead of an official organizational one? These are the subtle traps set for the compassionate person in a hurry. The most powerful act of charity is not to give impulsively, but to give wisely. Take the 5 minutes to go to a verification site like Charity Navigator or GuideStar. Look up the organization. Ensure they are a registered nonprofit. This pause is not an act of distrust, it is an act of responsibility. It is how you honor your own generous impulse. Ultimately, understanding the mechanics of deception, from the boardroom to your living room to your inbox, is not about building a fortress of paranoia. It is about dismantling the power that fear and manipulation have over you. It is about learning to listen not just to the words people say, but to the full spectrum of human communication. This knowledge gives you the ability to move through the world with less fear, more clarity, and the quiet confidence that you are operating from a position of strength. You are no longer just a player in the game, you understand the rules.